Boy, he did pretty good today, didn't he? Amen. There's nothing better than starting worship with some songs that uplift, that encourage us, that empower us, and so he did a great job today. And I'm going to apologize up front because I know it's going to happen. I have been sticking the name of today's lesson in my head all week, and I continue to mix up the names of our main characters. Today we're looking at Joseph and his very colorful coat. But I keep getting Jacob, Joshua, and Joseph all messed up in my head all week. There's too many J's in that family. So if I do it, don't tell me I did it. Leave me alone. I'm just saying now. Now, today's story, especially for our kids, today's story is about Joseph, and he had the most beautiful coat in the world. And we're going to talk about the consequences of that coat for the more adult part of this lesson today. But Joseph had this coat. Now, his father Jacob, also known as Israel, had given him this beautiful coat, and it went down as history as one of the most memorable pieces of clothing ever. I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to go to the Smithsonian and see the dresses that the first ladies wore for the inauguration balls and all, and they're gorgeous, and they go all the way back to close to the beginning of our nation, and they're beautiful, and but Joseph's coat, now that was something special, especially for that day and time. People throughout history have recounted this story. In fact, it's even a musical that was made famous. And so why all the fuss? It's just, wasn't it Dolly Parton that did A Coat of Many Colors? Now, that sold 1 million albums, but it still was not sung as many times as the musical. Why? Well, the truth behind the story, as cool as the story is about this nice coat, the story is a lesson in family drama, family fighting, jealousy, betrayal, lying, and a bratty kid that can't keep his mouth shut around his brothers. I mean, I don't know how many of you had siblings, but I have two. So I was the oldest, so my parents practiced on me. They were much better at parenting with my brother. Plus, he was smarter than me and was a doctor, and that didn't hurt. That didn't help my cause going through school, I'm just going to say. I thought straight A's meant really straight C's and you were good. But, and then when my sister came along, now my parents were wealthy. My dad was running a company, and my brother and I didn't know any part of that, getting to go on school trips and to Europe and stuff. It's very different. But the one thing I did know is that I could say certain words to my brother, and instantly there'd be a fight. And it was good. So here we got Joseph, who should have been smart enough, because he was very different than his siblings. He should have been smart enough to just sit back and be quiet, but he couldn't. So we'll talk about that in a moment. But his coat is the spark that ignites a powder keg of emotions that lasts for years and changed the course of history in many ways. So we're going to start with our reading from Genesis chapter 37 and move forward from there.
Everyone, the reading will be from Genesis chapter 37, verses 1 through 11. Genesis 37, verses 1 through 11. Now Jacob lived in the land where his father had lived as a stranger in the land of Canaan. These are the records of the generations of Jacob. Joseph, when he was 17 years of age, was pasturing the flock with his brothers while he was still a youth, along with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought back a bad report about them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his other sons, because he was the son of his old age. And he made him a multicolored tunic. And his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, and so they hated him and could not speak to him on friendly terms. Then Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Please listen to this dream which I have had. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf stood up and also remained standing. And behold, your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to my sheaf." Then his brothers said to him, "Are you actually going to reign over us? Or are you really going to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Then he had yet another dream and informed his brothers of it and said, "Behold, I have had yet another dream, and behold, the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." He also told it to his father as well as to his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have had? Am I and your mother and your brothers actually going to come down to bow down to the ground before you?" And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind.
So let's kind of look at this and start. First, he goes out in the field with his brothers, and look what he does. He tattletaled. He came back and said, "They weren't doing what they were saying naughty words, and I didn't do it, Dad. They are bad. I'm not. I'm pretty good." And then the next thing we see him do is, "Brothers, I have got to tell you, I had the weirdest dream. I was dreaming the other night, and basically you all came and knelt before me and bowed. Isn't that cool?" Not cool. Or how about this one? I had another one, and the stars, the moon, and everything was bowing before me. It's like, how arrogant can you be, son? Pretty arrogant. Now, his brothers are probably ranging, if we think about the nature of things, they're in their 30s, maybe 40s on down, because there were so many kids. And we've got him saying, "Well, you can't argue with dreams, brothers. Can't argue with dreams. I'm probably going to be the ruler someday." What are you supposed? I should end the lesson there and say, just keep your mouth shut sometimes. Don't cause trouble. I know I look around, I just want to point out some people as probably having been troublemakers in their youth. And I'm not going to name names. I'm just going to stand here with my arms out. And sometimes we need to just back off. So what did this coat symbolize? I mean, surely you had a purpose in mind. Well, it was given to his father because the coat itself symbolized great favor. Now, this wasn't an everyday work garment. This wasn't something you would put on, I've got suits. I've got some kind of dressier shirts and khakis. But then I've got some Carhartt shirts, T-shirts with holes all in them. Bruce Harbach used to make fun of me because I would wear jeans until they fell off me, especially when we would go hunting. They'd have holes all ripped up. And in fact, there was a couple different trips to Canada where I didn't get to bring my pants home because a guy named Roger, y'all remember him, and a guy named Bruce would grab my pants, knock me down, grab my pants, and rip the legs off them. They were so bad. I mean, there's a lot of difference in what you would wear to work in that you don't care about, and nice clothing. So this is a coat that spoke of nobility, not of being a shepherd for life. This is a coat that set him apart from his brothers in such an obvious way. It'd be one thing if he said, your mom sewed you a new coat today, and it was nice. But no, this one said, you are royalty. You are so much better than everyone else. And so this coat symbolized their hatred. This coat wound up symbolizing their jealousy. They couldn't stand the sight of it, and it's about to enter a tipping point. And Jacob showed so much favoritism to Joseph. But why? Well, Genesis 37 verse 3 says, "Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he was the son of his old age." He was his son that came along when he thought his beloved wife, we'll talk more about her in a minute, he didn't think they would have a child. And so here comes this son, and it's the answer to his prayers. It's the answer to what he thinks makes a beautiful marriage between him and the wife he loved. See, Joseph was the son of Jacob and Rachel. Now, Jacob had met Rachel, the daughter of Laban, and he loved her very much. I mean, love at first sight. And he wanted to have her. And so he went to her father Laban, and he talked to him, and he said, I want to marry your daughter. And he said, okay, you can. But here's the deal. Here's how we do it in our country. I don't know how they do it in your country, but we work for a wife. So you will give me 7 years of labor, and I'll give you your wife. And so he worked hard for 7 years. And when their wedding day was over, clearly he had not seen her because of veils. When their wedding day was over and they entered their tent for their first night together, and she pulls off her veil, it is her sister Leah. Now, I'm going to be mean for a second. The Bible verse coming up on that could take two ways. It said she had weak eyes. I think she made everybody else's eyes hurt. She was so ugly. I don't know that for a fact. Maybe she was blind. But that wasn't who he married. This was not the wife. And so the father says, oops, we also have a custom. The older one has to get married first. And 7 more years, you can have the one you love. So he does it. So they go into this marriage with him not loving his first wife. Now, that's not it to say parents, or adults, he didn't do his duty with his wife, the marital duty. He did, and children did come along. But he did not love her from the very beginning. And made no secret of the fact that he loved Rachel more. In fact, it says that when God saw how much she was hated, Leah, he opened her womb, but Rachel remained barren. So this starts even more years of rivalry. Rachel gives her servant Bilhah to Jacob and says, through my servant, we can have children. So Leah says, ha, 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 through my servant, we can have more children. You know, anything to get you to love me. Well, that wasn't the plan. And it says in verses 22 through 24, God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb, and she conceived and bore a son and said, God has taken away my reproach. And she called his name Joseph, saying, may the Lord add to me another son. So in those days, and I think it still exists at some point now, there was, I don't know what the word is here. The other women in the family, the other wives, would not be as nice if you couldn't bear children, because your mark, your status as a woman was on your childbearing ability. And she couldn't until they were up in years. So she had been teased. She had been made fun of. I mean, here's the one, this is my mind, it doesn't say it, but here's the one he spent most nights in her tent than he did with the other women. He stayed with her more because he loved her more. He wanted to be with her. And so they go through years of marriage with no child, and she is feeling let down by God. She's feeling let down by the other wives in this family because of how they treat her. She's miserable. So God hears her cry and gives her this child. And so here's where we're at. He has wanted a child with this wife that is beautiful and that is young and that he's always wanted to have a family with. She was his world. And she finally can. And on top of that, gives him a son. This is just great. Now, we think that this child complicates things anyway, but we got to look at this as a family that is full of lies and deception already. You know, they have set this pattern of lying to get what they want, of deceiving to get what they want. Of not caring that you were hurting an immediate family member. I was talking with someone this week, and they said something about their sibling, and I said, well, I think one of the things you got to think about is the old saying, I can beat up my brother, but no one else can beat up my brother. Family comes first, you know. Take care of your family. And so quit fighting because if you don't have your brother, you don't have anybody. You know, stick it out. Be strong with each other. And so the brothers now see that not only is Jacob being favored, or is Jacob favoring their brother Joseph, but also he's favoring the one wife over the other wives, the other mothers. And that's not right. So And I don't think it started with the coat. I don't think just one day when he's 17, his father said, I've decided to make you a coat. I'm betting he got the choicest portions when he was a little kid. I'm betting when the other kids were 6 and 7 and they were sent out to work the sheep that he was still hanging out in the tents back in camp. The favoritism, it builds. It does not, you don't just start showing one child much more favor one day than the others, after 15, 20 years. You started that early on. Now, what happened to the coat? Well, Joseph's beautiful coat of many colors winds up destroyed. Why? Well, it's this whole storm of events. He's 17. He's been bringing back these bad reports. He's been having these dreams, and his brothers are hating him. And then he goes out one day to the fields to check on his brothers while they were working. Now, see, this is already a mistake. Go check on your brothers. No. Anyway, he had already brought back one bad report, and they see him coming, and they decide to kill him. Now, Reuben, the oldest brother, is a little bit kinder. Reuben says, no, let's don't do that. Let's just throw him in a pit and let him die there instead of murdering him. That's nicer. We don't have to be here and see it. And so when he comes to his brothers, they rip his robe off him. The robe of many colors that he wore is what Genesis 37:24 says. And Reuben had plans to come back at night and rescue him. But before he could, a band of traders came by. Picture in your mind the nomad traders on their camels. They come by, and there was a massive slave trade in those days. And so he says, I got a slave for you. You want to buy him? And so they sell their brother. So now, all of a sudden, Joseph's on his way to Egypt where his life will change forever. And we'll get back to that new life soon on another Sunday. But what do? Now you've thrown him in a pit. But if you let him go, he's going to go tattle on you. So we sell him. And everything's fine. Now we got some gold in our hands because we sold a slave. And we've gotten rid of our problem with the brother. And the coat's laying there. And all of a sudden, one of them said, I don't know which one's smart enough to say, what are we going to tell Dad? Did we think this through before we did this? What are we going to tell Dad? So they take his robe and they rip it up and they slaughter a goat and they pour blood on it and they take it to the father and say, this we have found. Can you identify it? Okay, first, that's a ridiculous statement. Can you identify? It's the only coat of many colors in their region. Can you identify whose coat this is? And the father said, it's my son's. A fierce animal must have devoured him. My son Joseph is no doubt torn in to pieces. He's heartbroken. Now the brothers have lied to their father. They have broken his heart. For those of you who've lost somebody close to you, that's a pain you have a hard time getting over, isn't it? I mean, you can dull it, but it never goes away. And so he has lost the favored son. This is a major pain that's not going to go away. So I want you to learn 5 things from the coat story today. I mean, there's a lot of things, but the story at face value is this tragic story of a really bratty teenager, evil brothers, and parents that showed too much favoritism of one child over another. But in the end, it's a story of heroic redemption. It's a story of forgiveness. It's a story of God taking a bad situation and making it bless his people, making it bless his kingdom. So let's look at them. First, deception will ruin you. Lies never help anyone. It goes back to lying over or cheating to get favoritism and to get a blessing. It goes to Laban deceiving over which wife would be which. In time, in fact, he actually, in some ways, steals the flock from his father-in-law and takes the flock and the wives and flees. Eventually, they make peace with Laban, but it's not great. Laban winds up never seeing his family again, his 2 daughters and his grandchildren. But deception can ruin you, and it may seem like a small thing. This small lie that you plant. I remember this is a major in the Army, and that's getting up there a little bit. This is a person you're looking at for command and all. And she worked for me, But she would go to sick call a lot, which is unusual for a senior officer. And I was starting to get a little not so sure she was really sick all the time. So one day, see, I told Ben when he was young, lies will find you out. God will tell on you. But one day, she calls in, a really busy day. I'm sick. I can't come to work. Okay, fine. And that day I decided, because everybody was working so hard, to treat everyone to lunch at the mall that was near our office. I took everybody to the courtyard of the mall, and we sat down to have a nice lunch together and visit, and we look up, and who do we see coming out of one store going into another? And not a single doctor worked in that mall that I was aware of. Well, her deception wound up eventually costing her a career because we restricted her so much. She had to have a doctor's slip to think about coming in late. You know, she was never considered for command, and she wound up having to just retire because she was never going anywhere again because of a small lie, wanting to go to the mall, wanting a day off rather than just going and doing your job. Deception will ruin us, but truth will set you free. In your relationships right now, children, just be honest with your parents. It's easier. Just be honest. So many things that you think are a huge deal in your mind when you're young are really a big nothing burger. I mean, as parents, we could care less. You know, I mean, we might fuss at you. You know, why did you smart mouth your teacher? But really, in the scheme of things, your life is not over. You know, spouses, just be honest. Just be honest. We were talking the other day. Neither one of us worries or says anything when the other one picks up their phone to look at something. You know, I am not afraid of her reading my text messages. I'm not afraid if she goes through all my mailboxes, emails. I'm not afraid if she looks at my viewing history on Chrome. I'm not afraid. But if I start all of a sudden saying, you know, or she's saying, I can't get in your phone. Well, I changed my lock for security. You know, the bank said we should change them. Yeah, she's going to start wondering. Be honest with the person you love. In fact, be honest with everybody in the community. Bob mentioned it in class this morning. If you had to choose between an atheist worker and a Christian worker, who is obviously going to be the better choice? Well, the Christian worker should be. They should be honest, trustworthy, hardworking, etc. And same thing in your marriage. If there is no trust between you, then you have nothing. And then if you have no trust and you have a fight, it's hard to rebuild that then, isn't it? It's hard to come back from that. Deception ruins. Truth sets us free. Also, parents, this is a biggie. Favoritism will cost you in the end. Ultimately, the favoritism Jacob showed Rachel and then Joseph, it cost him his son eventually. All because he was showing favoritism. If he had shown a good, loving kindness to all of them, it would have been a very different story. Now, I got 3 grandkids. And if they ask me, I tell them which one I love the best. I love Liam the best as my oldest grandson. I love Declan best as my youngest grandson. And I love Fiona best as my only granddaughter. See, they're not going to trip me up with that one. I love them all equally, especially in different ways, but I love them all. Favoritism will ruin your child. We can have a favorite coffee. Jamaica me crazy. You can have a favorite coffee flavor. You can have a favorite coat, whatever. Okay, this is off topic, but can I just get the men to say amen for a second? Because my wife said to me after Ellen's funeral, I love Burles. Burles, who was a retired preacher here from town that we're friends with, I loved his coat. Would you ask him where he got his suit? No, I will not ask another man where he got his suit. Well, I'm going to call his wife. That's fine. You call her. But men don't do that. Amen? Thank you. Men also don't ask, what's wrong with your wife? Is she getting better? If he wants to tell me his wife is sick, he'll tell me. If you want to know, look on Facebook. Don't bother me with it. Amen. So you can have a favorite coffee. Now she's mad at me. We can have a favorite coat. We can have a favorite lot of things, but not a favorite child. Never a favorite child. Do your families know how much you love them? Many of you may have come from a background where I love you is not a word said a whole lot. Sometimes it's cultural. Sometimes it's just how I am, how you are. I've changed. I like to say I love you a lot now because I see how quick time is going by. And sometimes you won't be able to say it. And especially with your kids, if I don't tell these kids today I love them, why should I expect them? I'm talking to all these kids. Why should I expect them to ever come to me when they're in trouble? Because if I don't say I love them, then they think of me as the mean preacher that they're scared of. So, kids, if you wonder why I'm always, even if I don't stop and talk to you, why I pat you on the back or squeeze your arm as I walk by, it's because I love you. I love you. Parents, tell your children daily, I love you. Remind your children regularly, you can tell me anything and I am not going to overreact. Now, that's not the same as I'm not going to punish you. But I promise I will listen to you and hear you out. You can never say I love you too much. Third, jealousy will wreck you. Many years later, when Joseph is governor over the land of Egypt, his brothers come to buy grain because they don't know who the governor is. They just know this famine has destroyed us. We need grain for our flocks. You know, can you imagine the decimation to all of that area with that great drought? How many of those massive flocks that they had have all died out? They had to eat them, or they just died from a lack of food and water. And so it's crushing. It's kind of like the Great Depression was here. All of a sudden you go from plenty to nothing. And so they hear that there is food in Egypt, that Pharaoh has been storing it up. Let's go buy some. And they go there. But yet they find out that they have to go and bow the knee, hint, back to the dreams. They have to bow a knee to their brother in order to get food to survive. And on top of that, what if Dad hears who the governor is? You know, what's that going to be like? So they think it's a reckoning on them for blood. They think God is paying them back right then for the blood. And they assume their brother is going to be evil to them because of what they've done. It's as if they've been sitting there waiting forever for punishment to come into their lives. So no good comes out of this jealousy. It causes them to murder or lie about murder. It causes them to do hurtful things. But by the way, a side lesson you can also learn from in the depths of adversity, you can rise above it. Young people, you can take a job when you're young, and you may think, I don't want this job for life. That's fine. Do the best job you can while you have that job and look for another one. Because you can rise above. You can take a career that you think could not go anywhere. One of Allison's best friends in high school started working at McDonald's. She still does, unless she's just retired, but she's close to retiring. She still does. She manages all the McDonald's in all this region. She makes a ton of money, all because she was a good front desk clerk, whatever, at McDonald's, handing out hamburgers for 70 cents in those days. You know, just doing a good job. When we trust God with our lives, we do not need to fall into a pit of jealousy and strife. Rise above it. Rise beyond it. Don't let it tear you down. Don't start coveting your neighbor's things. Don't start coveting what your neighbor has. You know, we don't have a ton of money. We don't have a lot. But we love each other. We got a nice house. We have an extended family here that we love so much. I have an extended earthly family that I love so much. I have the best daughter-in-law in the world. I just had to throw that in. All these things, and none of those things cost money, does it? It's all called love. It all is called love. And boasting will humble us. Bragging about everything. And just side on this first is if you're bragging about everything, your friends pretty soon start to see it and start to know it. And they don't listen to you enraptured by your exploits. They're listening to you and laughing at you, because the boasting can get pretty ridiculous. I've got a lot of respect for Joseph and what he did as an adult, but as a teenager, he was a jerk. He was mean-spirited. Who would have ever liked him? But God gave him these dreams that showed of the future, and yet he used those dreams not to say, good things are coming for me. God has said so. To say to his brothers, you're going to bow before me. I'm going to be the ruler. And he does. I mean, he becomes second highest person in all of Egypt, the most powerful country in the known world at that time. He's number 2. But he didn't need to brag about it when he was 18. When we boast with pride or selfishness, one of the things Proverbs says, pride goes before destruction. When we start a life of bragging and boasting, it's going to come back to bite you every time. I came to one of those 60-year-old revelations the other day, because I've always been able to beat up Liam. But Liam's much taller than me now. And Liam's stronger than me because he's young. And so he was smarting off a little bit, and I said, let's arm wrestle, boy. I'll show you. He about ripped my arm out of my socket. He put me down so fast. Now, I can still beat him up because I'm older and wiser, and old men fight dirty, just so you know. But, all of a sudden I woke up to the realization is I'm not 20 anymore. I can't do it. I actually heard Bruce say the other day he's having trouble climbing the silo. He wouldn't have said that 5 years ago to anybody out loud. Boasting will lead to a fall. So, as the Bible says, if I'm going to boast about anything, I should boast in the Lord. If you're going to brag about something, brag about how good God is. And you do that through your interactions with the people around you. Talking to people about your Lord. Interjecting it in your classroom. Just saying God bless you to somebody that waits on you. Inviting people that you know even marginally to church with you. I'd love to have you come visit sometime. Something like that. And lastly, the 5th lesson is God can change you. God can change me. God can change anything. Joseph did make some mistakes as a child, but guess what? God used him. He came from a family steeped in generations of sin and lies and deceptions. God can change him. God can use him. God looked at Joseph and said, I'm choosing you for this mission. I choose you. With all your mistakes, with all your weaknesses, I can use you. God did a mighty work. Now, God may never make you governor of Egypt. It's probably pretty doubtful. But God can make you a shining star in your workplace. God can make you somebody that people are drawn to. I'll give you a little hint. You don't have to have the title preacher for people to come to you for Christian advice. You just have to live a Christian life and not be afraid to say, oh, I'm a Christian. Not being afraid to share with your coworkers. I did this every Sunday. We'd have a discussion in my office. They'd want to know how church went for us and want to tell me about how church went for them. And you know what? In some ways, I really couldn't have cared less about how church went for them, because I disagreed so heartily with some of the churches they went with. But the reality is I listened and I smiled and I talked to them. Why? Because they came to me with questions about the Bible. They came to me to borrow the Bible on my desk. That was before I was a preacher. That was just me saying, I'm a child of God. And I love you. And I care about you. I care about your spiritual life. So after the death of their father, Joseph's brothers were afraid that Joseph would seek revenge on them then. But Joseph was a changed man, and when he saw his brothers, his words were some of the best in Scripture. They're ones that you can hold to when life doesn't seem fair. In Genesis 50, 19 through 21. And Joseph said to them, do not fear, For am I in the place of God? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good things. To bring about, let me back up because I totally lost my train of thought there in the middle of that. But God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. So do not fear, I will provide for you and your little ones. Thus he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. At 17, Joseph was not ready to be a leader. At 17, most of us are not ready to be any sort of leader at all. He had a lot of growing up to do. It came with a lot of adversity. Some of it he deserved and some of it he didn't. But God used these trials to make him what he wanted him to be. And he does the same for us. I don't know, I got a lot of scars. Some I got honest, some I got because I'm a klutz. But, you know, sometimes these scars on my hands and arms, and they're like a roadmap of experiences. Because I was kind of stupid when I was young about the things I like to do. They're a roadmap. Our life before we became convicted and a child of God is a roadmap that helps us help other people. Can't change what's happened. Joseph's coat teaches us a lot of different lessons. But I think the biggest ones that God teaches us is that he can change you and make you very valuable in his kingdom. He can change you from the inside out. What others may mean as evil against you, God means to be good. God means to work for the best. That's what God means with that. God means for good with him, and all things are possible through our God. Today, the lesson is yours. If you have a need in your life, if you want to come up and confess you've been mean to your siblings, I don't care. If you have a need in your life and we can help you with it, please come while together we stand and while we sing.